everybody at the table introduce themselves, starting with Greg and moving in that direction.
Greg Evans, LTD.
John Field, over City Council. Stephen Vermont, City of Springfield.
Hillary Wiley, City of Springfield.
David Warren.
Why don't we go with the people seated? Go ahead.
David Warren.
Again, Crawford Odat.
John Reese for the City of Eugene.
Alan Salika with Eugene City Council.
George Klepel, Elcott.
Pete Sorensen, Lake County Commissioner.
Bob Handy, Lane County Commissioner. Welcome, Mr. Warren.
Mark Pangborn, Lane Transit District.
Okay.
Lane Transit District.
Oh, very good. And we'll get to anybody who hasn't yet sat down. We'll do that once you sit down.
All right.
And the folks in the back of the room, would you like to introduce yourself? Sarah, starting with you.
Sarah Madary, City of Eugene. Kelly Kennedy, River Road.
Myron Vanderpool, Elcott.
Glenn Goodwin, Springfield.
Son Bittler, Springfield.
Greg Hyde, William Lane Park and Recreation District.
Rob Interfeld, City of Eugene.
Tom Schwartz, LTD.
Rob Zanko, Citizen.
Julia Barry, Lake County. Ann Thompson, Elcott.
Paul Thompson, Elcott.
Kathy Leaderhall, Lake Council of Government.
Dave Jacobson, Citizen Advisory Committee. Tom Boyett, Springfield.
Tim Baxter, Disability Services Advisory Council.
Mary Johnson, the SDS advocacy.
Shine, same thing.
And others at the table who were previously.
Mayor Katie Piercy.
And Christian Convert, welcome.
Should introduce, although he and I have not formally met, David Warren is filling in for Sonny during, a 6-month assignment.
That's correct.
So,
He'll be back in February.
This is one of those assignments that your new position has drawn, along with 400 or 500 others. So, welcome.
Thank you.
And Sonny always brought treats for everybody.
That he was great. So now, if I could move on to item number 2, we will ask for a motion to approve the August 13 meeting minutes.
I'll move approval of those minutes.
Second.
And is there any discussion of the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say no. Abstain. Sorry, noted. And next on the adjustments, I just had the suggestion was made to follow up on the regional transportation, RTP discussion from last month, and I thought we could carve out 10 minutes for that by taking some of the time from the MPO Citizen Advisory Committee report, which usually doesn't take 10 minutes, and then the other would be item F on page 2, that's item 5F, which is the letters on the Tiger grant applications, which I don't think anybody's going to oppose, so that we'll cut that. So if I get my math right, we could create a 10-minute opportunity for us to talk about the RTP. We could just do that right now after the public comment and right before the Citizen Advisory Committee, and then if my math is right, we would have it all work out. So at this point, I would like to invite any other adjustments to the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to perhaps under follow-up and next steps 5I, that we could have a brief discussion and update about the Oregon Transportation Commission being in town next Tuesday. I know there's been some discussion among some elected officials and staff about what that agenda might look like and the participation of electeds, and perhaps we can have a brief discussion about that since that's next Tuesday.
For a future meeting, I'd like to get an update of where we are at the greenhouse gas planning that we put into the unified report.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just by way of explanation for the Eugene, Springfield, Lane County representatives who represent their jurisdictions on the Cable Commission, there's a memorandum at your place related to the PEG distribution of funds. It's just a status report. It'll come before this body next month. But Milo wanted to keep you informed as to where it stands.
Okay. So let's go to the public comment. And if I could get Ms. Johnson to come forward first and sit up there where it says public staff.
Okay.
And if you could just give us your address and take a few minutes to give us your testimony, we'd really appreciate it.
I'm Mary Johnson. I'm at 157 LK Drive in Eugene. That's River Road. I'm a member of the Advocacy Committee of Lane County Senior Disabled Services, and we have been working with the City of Springfield hoping to improve traffic safety at the double lane roundabout on Pioneer Parkway. So I came and spoke to this group originally. At your suggestion, I went and spoke to the Citizens Advisory Council. In both cases, I have been asking that might consider reconsideration of the STPU grant, which has not covered the initial cost so far. However, at this point, both the Citizens Advisory Council recommended a reconsideration. The Lane County Board of Commissioners also suggested a reconsideration of that. I learned today that there's some very good news from the City of Springfield and that there perhaps are additional funds available for that. So I came today to hear the result of the STPU grant and hoping that at some point there would be City of Springfield money available to make this much needed traffic improvement. I'll
Okay.
take up more of your time.
Thank you so much. And Dennis Shine, please come forward, Mr. Shine. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Shine. I live at 2923 Game Farm Road in Springfield, which is within walking distance of the roundabout. And I used to walk across there on a regular basis because there's a walking lane just north of Safeway on Pioneer Parkway. And it's unsafe to do that anymore, so if I want to take that walk, I have to get in my car, drive down the Safeway, and then walk back to that path. And it presents a danger to anyone who's a senior disabled pedestrian. It's fine for automobiles going through there, and I think it's a significant improvement on automobile traffic, but not for pedestrians. Now, I had planned to talk about some financial things. Things move faster than you think sometimes. Yesterday I had talked to the finance director for the city of Springfield to find out how we could get some money, and basically an abridged version of that was that there is no money in the contingency fund for the traffic division. What you need to do is you need to have the director of the traffic division write a memo to the city manager requesting the city manager ask the city council for contingency funds to get this done. So I'm hopeful that the money that's mentioned this morning in the email that we got actually materializes. And this is a safety issue for many people that live adjacent to or in that area. And so I appreciate your willingness to listen on this issue. I noticed the money that's been allocated covers only material costs. There's no mention of labor cost in the memo we got from the director of the traffic division. So I'm hopeful that the money will also be available for labor to install those things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tim Baxter is here. Welcome, Mr. Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Tim Baxter. I live at 2816 Terrace Street in Eugene. I also am on the advocacy committee, as Dennis and Mary. I wanted to address one specific point that actually is the intersection of two agenda items today. I guess you might call it roundabouts meets Tiger Grant. Some time ago, in a totally unrelated context, and as Mr. Grimaldi confirmed before the meeting today, the city had informed us that they have plans for a double-lane roundabout on Franklin Boulevard. Now, I don't know the extent to which that contemplation would be subsumed under a Tiger Grant, but with all respect, I submit, and I think my colleagues would submit, that the Pioneer Parkway was planned and built without due consideration of the accessibility needs of vision-impaired people and people with disabilities. And I am confident, and I don't say this in sort of a, wise guy way, but I'm sincerely confident that in the planning of this next roundabout on Franklin Boulevard, that the lessons we're learning are going to continue to learn as to the Pioneer Parkway roundabout are going to be fully applied on Franklin Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Zako.
Good morning, I'm Rob Zako. I live at 1280B East 9th Avenue in Eugene. You've seen me before. I spend a lot of time thinking about transportation, land use, and climate change issues, which is what I want to talk to you about this morning, in particular your item 5H about the MPO Greenhouse Gas Task Force. It's about, climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And I'll say up front that there's some people who may be skeptical of climate change, maybe even some folks in this room. For those folks, I want you to think about not climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, but about the cost of fuel. It's hard to believe, but just a year ago, the price of gasoline here in the Eugene-Springfield area was approaching $4.50 a gallon. We were saved by a recession and gave us a little bit of time. I'm hearing now that the recession is technically over. We may have a jobless recession, or jobless recovery, but we can look forward to, yes, it's not, we can look forward to gas prices going up to $4.50 a gallon next summer or so, and then beyond that we don't know. The point is that people are going to be looking for other ways to get around. So whether you call it climate change or cost of energy, really what we're looking at here is things are changing. I think the key word here is change. And we as a community can either let change happen to us, we can prepare for it. I have a lot of friends around the state, and some of these friends, they're mainly lawyers, think that the way to deal with change is to tell other people what to do. They like to pass laws and regulations and stuff like that. And, speed limits are a good thing. In this case, I don't know if that's really the way to go. But this task force that's being put together apparently is looking to develop legislation for the legislature to pass in some way. My hope for that, and I hope that what you will do, and whoever your representative is, Councilor Zelenka or Councilor Wiley, is to go to that thinking about what our needs are locally, what we would like to see happen, how we want to prepare for change rather than let it happen to us, and then go to the state and say, this is what we need from the state to help us, rather than wait for the state to take the lead and come and tell us what we have to do. In that line, I support the proposal from staff to form this subcommittee to advise the representative to the task force. I think that's a really good idea. I think that it should be broadened a bit beyond just transportation specialists, but include land use folks, which already does a bit, and climate change folks. If they're climate change people in the cities or county or whatever, to have that. You might even consider getting some expertise from the University of Oregon or the private sector to be part of that. Really, again, my message to you today is don't wait for the state to tell us what to do. Let's take the initiative and figure out what we want to have happen. I think this task force is an opportunity for us to have that discussion, and the subcommittee can be sort of the seed or the core of how we're having that discussion. Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, let's go into our added item, this RTP discussion. You'll recall we said a month ago we were going to have a discussion on it, so I'll just, I know Commissioner Handy had some comments he wanted to make on this, so I'll just call on you.
Well, thank you, and I see Paul Thompson coming up, and thanks, Paul. We had discussed last month and previously that our interest in the upcoming regional transportation plan that, based on our history in 2004 and 2007, has happened quickly. There wasn't a lot of time for policy options and discussion here at this table or with the public. And I think there was a commitment expressed that we would do things differently this time. So I wanted to ask a question and also make a suggestion in that we've been doing a lot of great work with our Citizens Advisory Committee, and that's upcoming on our agenda. That might be part of their work plan. So a couple questions would be, do you and the TPC folks look at this as a major update, as a minor update? Can you maybe be short of going through the calendar, which has been helpful, but maybe orally give us some ideas around when things really start to happen, and along with some sequence of some steps, we're interested in where and when the policy options may be part of the discussion. And I'd like to have a conversation about what the role of the MPC is, the Citizen Advisory Committee, or is the discussion really happening at the TSP level at the various jurisdictions, or what do we see as some of the role of the MPC amidst all this?
Well, let me try and address all of that briefly. The RTP update, although there's not a major minor language distinction in the federal regulations, that is due to be adopted by this MPO by November of 2011 would be on the minor side of things. And I will call your attention back to, although we don't unfortunately have in front of us, the schedule and calendar and work program that was approved by this body last fall. That was the Regional Transportation and Land Use Planning Work Program that went to LCDC last October. And it showed the schedule for work on the Eugene, Springfield, and Coburg local TSPs, on the regional TSP, and on the MPO's RTP. That schedule talks about how, essentially what you refer to, Commissioner Handy, the local TSPs leading a lot of the policy discussions over the next several years, and that to the extent that they can inform the 2011 RTP, there would be reflection of that in the 2011 RTP. But frankly, we expect the next RTP update, and again, RTP is replicated on a 4-year cycle, we expect the next RTP update to fully reflect what comes out of the 3 local TSP updates and the regional TSP, that the schedule doesn't show as adopted, the LCDC approved schedule doesn't show as adopted until 2013. So just to summarize that again, I think really the local and regional TSPs are leading the current policy discussions as well as project inventories and other things like that. There are elements of the federal RTP that will get fairly significant looks before the 2011 adoption, such as the environmental coordination information that we need to look at every 4 years. The transportation demand management element, we're talking about which venue that may be looked at, but it could end up in the RTP as well as the local TSPs by 2011, having a significant look. And of course, we have to update the financial constraint and projections for the RTP every 4 years. But again, on the policy side, and a lot of that, those discussions will happen at the local document level. I might, as I mentioned to you before the meeting, I might back up to last month when your calendar showed, and there was some discussion about the congestion management process as part of the RTP happening very soon. And that was, unfortunately, a bit of a misstatement. The congestion management process is not part of the RTP. The congestion management process is a standalone process that we need to take care of under the federal requirements of the MPO. And it is something that's scheduled for us to bring back to you and discuss, or to bring to you and discuss next month. But again, that's not part of the RTP, so the RTP really shouldn't have been mentioned in that context last month.
Okay. Alan?
Looking at the calendar, I noticed that the local TSPs aren't on here. It's a great calendar, I love it. And so make it, I think putting the local TSPs on here as they interact with the RTP is a good idea. I don't see one,
No, they're not, and again, if you're looking at
at the local
Yes.
process.
And I'd like to take the opportunity to remind you that the 3-month calendar is updated every month. This one's updated quarterly, and it will be updated in October. So this is essentially July's version you're still looking at. So some of those RTP things that I just referred to will be modified in next month's version of this. And perhaps what we could bring back to you next month also is, just for reminder's sake, the LCDC approved work program that lays out the schedule for the TSPs, the RTSP, and the RTP through 2013 or so.
That'd be good, but stick the TSPs in here.
Yes.
Okay, that helps me, because I really like this visual, so, and how they interact with, feed into. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? Okay, thank you so much. And now I'd like to call up our Kathy and Dave. This is item 5A on your printed agenda. Report from the MPO Citizen Advisory Committee. Welcome.
Thank you.
No name tag this month?
I've got it right here.
Okay.
I have to know who I am.
Oh, that looks pretty formal.
I can't always check my driver's license to make sure. Thank you very much. Pardon my voice, I got in my throat. I will try to do this quickly because somehow we lost some minutes, so we'll do this. Item 5A, the report, the CAC held a meeting in August, its regular meeting, and the main agenda items, we're looking at the CAC work program for the next year, and I will get to that in detail in a moment. The recruitment outreach plan, and I'll talk about that, and then the STIP-U draft funding. I believe Paul is going to be talking about that. So that takes care of item 5A. I'm going to go into this in a little more detail. The work program, we recommend that the MPC accept the recommendations from the Citizen Advisory Committee regarding the work program. And looking down below, we used a lot of the information we got from the joint meeting that was held between the MPC and the CAC at the beginning of August, and we appreciate greatly the input from everyone who was there. We're looking at priorities in two main areas. One area is what we do advisory to the MPC, and the other is the public involvement and advocacy area. So these are the things that we are indicating that we will be spending quite a bit of time with, because they are our priorities. The Surface Transportation Program-Urban for the fiscal years 2011 and 2013. The Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, we will be discussing priorities for the use of flexible funding, as there will be a report later on from staff on the CAC's agreement with what the subcommittees have come up with. The statewide transportation improvement plan, the regional transportation plan, and there are three elements there: a transportation demand management element, a freight element, and policy. Greenhouse gas planning, we will be looking at that. The West Eugene MX extension. Those are the priorities for the work program that would be advisory to the MPC on public involvement. We will initiate next year an in-depth review and update to include implementation of the Title VI regulations, and we have been looking at that for the last several months. We will continue to implement the 2008 and 2009 recommendations, including providing input on the Keep Us Involved website. The recruitment plan will be very large the next couple of months, and I will be talking about that on 5B. We will make recommendations to you regarding recruitment for the CAC, and we will ask for some assistance in new member recruitment. And then the MPO website implementation, phase 2. There is an attachment in here which you can read on your own. You probably have read it already. and it has to do with the summary of our meeting, and I think we had a great meeting last month, joint meeting. Let's go to 5C.
Would you like to deal with that since the MPC action was requested on that? Do you want a motion for acceptance or discussion on the
Okay, let's do
work
that.
program?
Thank you, George. So let me pause a second and give the MPC a chance to discuss that. Come up with-
And just to be clear, the 5 minutes was just from the item A.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Thank you.
Not the 10 minutes for item B, or the 10 minutes for C, or the, okay. All right. Any questions or comments regarding the report of the MPO Citizen Advisory Committee or the work program that we're moving into the work program part?
Thank you, and I'm training myself to get away from the acronym CAC. I understand folks aren't pleased with that, so I will continue to work on Citizen Advisory Committee. Thank you, Mr. Jacobson.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And I also want to call attention to my colleagues in the memo on page 5 under the community issues and priorities. I appreciate what staff's done here. There's some really excellent questions that really didn't fit into the rest of the data as they acknowledged, but at some point check those out. I think these are really important, and were a really good product of our healthy discussion with the NPC and the Citizens Advisory Committee last month. And I would like to make a motion to approve the work plan with these items. I would suggest rather than 6 items, we focus on 3 the first year. My motion would be to have the MPC prioritize, the Citizens Advisory Committee work program prioritize the STIP-U priorities for 2011 through 13, the regional transportation plan and the various elements, and the greenhouse gas plan. And I'll speak to the motion if there's a second. I wanted to mention that I think with the workload of the Citizen Advisory Committee, there's been some concern about whether we could get to everything. So I wanted to address that need by maybe for this first year shortening the list. And I suggested dropping the MTIP from that list, and that we at MPC seem to be doing that administratively, and we haven't really had many policy choices there, and neither would the Citizens Advisory Committee. Statewide transportation improvement program might be a similar element. Not a lot of policy choices for us here. We're also working on an act at Wayne County. And lastly, the West Eugene MX extension, very important, but there are other advisory committees working on that issue. And I wanted to focus the Citizen Advisory Committee on a few things that we can do well, and 12 months will click by in a hurry, and we can update next year whether it was too much or too little.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, I just want to know what you think of that, Dave, of shortening the list, having gone through this process, and in terms of the West Eugene MX extension discussion, I just want to hear from LPD whether they think they will lose anything if that we take that off that list because it's covered in other ways. So appreciate hearing that before we.
My response was I appreciate the sensitivity to our time. It is possible that these will be moved down in priorities, but not removed from the list. If we have time, we can get to these. But I think your suggestions of the STIP-U and the RTP and the greenhouse gas have merit. So thank you.
I was going to suggest the same thing, which is instead of removing them, have kind of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 2 at a time, how often it's available. I did want to hear from LTD, Mark, and Mike, Greg about West Eugene, because I think that's the MX extension. That's a really important big process, and potentially a lot of public involvement. Even though there's other people working on it, I think the more the better in that particular process. So I do that, and then after that, Amy will respond to my comment.
The more the better is the
the right phrase. There are a lot of opinions about it, some of them informed and some of them uninformed, and it's through that public process that we're going to help people understand, first of all, what it is that's happening, and then, we'll get feedback, but it will be based on what the reality is. And I think we want to try to maintain as much opportunity for input as we can.
And we recently had some analysis done by a group of grad students from the Public Policy and Planning Department at the U of O that kind of critiqued our public outreach process, and I think there were adjustments as we're going along with that to be much more inclusive in terms of that process. And maybe Tom can talk about what that's looking like right now, based on those recommendations.
Right. What I was going to say is that with respect to the CAC, the schedule of our project has been pushed out a little bit, and we'll talk more about that later. But the implications are that our main efforts around the process, which would involve selecting locally preferred alternative, which MPC is part of, and which I would guess the CAC would be making a recommendation to the MPC. That part's going to start closer to next July. Now, I would intend to come and give informational updates to the CAC as we have them before then, but the real work when the draft EIS is released and all is going to happen towards the end of the 12-month period. So, however you want to do it, whether it's a second tier and we bring it when we have it, but ultimately the CAC will play an important role for MPC's consideration of what we're doing.
The ones that Rob identified, I think, are processes that we own, and MPC owns, and West Virginia MX is not one that MPC owns. So I agree that it's very important, but with respect to this group, it's kind of a tier 2 one. But I don't want it to fall off the table.
I think probably not quite clear that MPC doesn't own it. MPC will have to vote on the preferred alternative, and they will have to approve it. So while it's the City of Eugene and LTD will, kind of be the primary force, it has to come through this because of the funding, and we'll need to receive an affirmative vote.
Yeah, what I meant by that was who's in charge of running it.
Right.
That's our decision making. And Dave still had an answer to the question that I had.
Go ahead, Dave. Okay, so our committee has a lot of unique interests. There's a large contingent on the committee that is very, very involved in public transportation, and they will not allow us to ignore it. So I think it will be a very significant part of our tier 2, maybe call it tier 1.5. Thank you.
Yeah, and as one of the primary, probably Hillary and I are the primary counselors for the MX that's going up Pioneer Parkway and MLK area, earlier is better. Because if we're already at a preferred alternative, and we talk a lot about public participation, is get it at the beginning and get everybody's issues on the table, because that's where you can make the easiest changes or accommodations, because once it's already in preferred alternatives, then you're kind of backtracking through the process a little bit. So I completely agree that the CAC is an important part of what we'll see, and that if you all are kept quiet in the group and know what's going on, it'll be much better for the process in the long run.
I'm just going to see if we can make a friendly amendment to your motion.
In the queue is the same thing.
Have the 4 be the top tier and the others be the second tier?
Yes, I was hoping to restate my motion based on my colleagues' input and calendar, and I would suggest that the priorities for the Citizen Advisory Committee work plan in this order for the coming year would be, number one, the SK15 priorities, since that's coming up in December. Number two, the RTP for reasons, number two, the greenhouse gas planning, since that'll also be coming before us soon. Third would be the regional transportation plan. And fourth, the West Eugene MX extension. And to have the other two items on there be a second tier of priorities with no given order. Is that agreeable to the second? Thank you.
Okay, so we have a restated motion. Is there any further discussion on the restated motion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. And the motion carries. So thank you so much. Now, we kind of merged that A and B in there. We're done, right, with the work plan. We're ready to move on to the calendar.
We didn't technically approve the plan.
Okay. The recruitment plan, excuse me.
Item C.
Yeah, C, okay. Go
Do
ahead.
you want to do anything else about the public involvement and advocacy? Well, we'll do that in-house, okay? We don't need to recommend, we don't need to vote on that. But we do need some decisions on the recruitment plan.
Okay.
Before we go there, so just to clarify the motion that just passed, that was approval with these priorities?
That was the approval of the work plan, work program. We are now on item C, which is the discussion of the recruitment plan, and Dave is giving us the intro on the recruitment plan. So we're done with A, and then we're on C.
The motion just says the priority.
Yeah.
To either extent what Bob was perhaps implied in that motion, but that's consistent with your intent.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to have a formal action approving the recruitment plan?
Right, let me go through this, please, and then we would appreciate that. Approve the CAC recommended recruitment plan and process. We would like you to open recruitment for the Citizen Advisory Committee. We would like you to appoint an interim NPC liaison. And we have found that whoever has been the liaison has provided focus for the group at the appropriate times, whether it's at the whole meeting or at the officers' meeting with staff. So I think that's a very important action for you and will help with their recruitment. I don't think, because we're going to talk about having a CAC appoint a subcommittee to do this, but I think it will be very, very beneficial to have a representative of this group on that subcommittee for your wisdom. So let's jump down to the recommendation. The CAC proposes that the NPC charge them with responsibility for the recruitment. The steps would include fine-tuning the recruitment plan, reviewing the draft recruitment materials, monitoring the recruitment, developing a selection process, reviewing the applications received, and recommending a slate of prospective CAC members to NPC. And I'm going to pass around, this is from 2007. We will be updating this, a little bit more explanation of what the NPO does, and I'm going to pass these around two ways. And I hope nobody wants to fill in the O's because that's just going to slow it down. And we will do a subcommittee, and when we find out who you will have working with us on that, we will build it in such a time frame that everybody can get there, even if it's midnight on a Saturday night. No, I don't mean that. Recruitment outreach. There's an attachment 2 here. There's 2 parts for the recruitment outreach. Part 1, new recruitment tools. Includes some of the outreach tools recommended by the community focus group that the CAC hosted on August 5th. And I saw a report from that meeting in here, and I was very impressed with the people who joined us and what the outcome was. So I call that attachment to your attention. Purpose of these tools is to try to reach a broader cross-section of the community. We want as many viewpoints as high on the committee. I mentioned the public transportation viewpoint. We have a freight viewpoint. We have somebody who's talking about the one person drive a car viewpoint, although that person's in a very small minority. We have bicycle pedestrian viewpoint people on there. And we would like as many different kinds of viewpoints as possible. Please refer to attachment 1 for report of the group. I call that to your attention. Part 2 lists tried and true recruitment tools that have been used in previous recruitments, and it gives you the numbers. We got 17 responses in 2004, 10 in 06, and 17 in 07. Applicants representing a diverse geography, people who live and or work in various locations in the MPO area, and with an array of targeted interests listed in the bylaws. And I'm pleased to be sitting here with the Springfield people, because I live in Springfield, so I feel very comfortable with the Springfield contingent here. The next steps will be, after we get your approval for the process and the plan and the direction, the CAC will work with staff to conduct the recruitment, report back to MPC each meeting, so you'll hear from me on that next one. The CAC suggests closing the recruitment on Sunday, November 15th. The subcommittee will review the applications, and I have just in a preliminary way spoken with staff about the possibility of telephone interviews. I think it's sometimes hard to tease out from the application. Okay, what I'm looking for are team players. We have a great team on the CAC. I am reluctant to let someone get his or her foot in the door who has a hobby horse and insists on that hobby horse. And because it detracts from the ongoing activity of the entire CAC. I think telephone interviews may help us to further that goal of continuing the team approach. We'll look at the applications, review them, and we will recommend a slate for the CAC to consider and then pass that on to you after November 15th. And those are the 3 recommendations. Again, approve the recommended recruitment plan and process, open recruitment, and that would be as soon as you approve it, and then appoint an interim MPC liaison. So it's yours now.
Okay. Is there a motion? Okay. So does everyone understand the motion? Approve the MPO Citizen Advisory Committee recruitment plan as presented. Is there a second? Second. Is there further discussion, Mr. Hand?
Thank you. Some comments and perhaps some thoughts here, and coming back to us, that would be great. One, thank you for your service, and you've indicated that you might be willing to take on another term, and thank you for considering that. And because the question was raised in the memo about Mr. Anderson and Mr. Farrington, I would like to encourage you to approach them also about considering, much around your comments about the team that's been developed. I think they've been very valuable, not only in our joint meeting, but from reading the minutes, of wonderful contributions. So thank you for considering approaching them to continue. I would also suggest that with the liaison position being open for 6 months, that perhaps George or others could maybe circulate a calendar, and each of us in the jurisdictions can take 1 month and have a rotating liaison for that period that might be beneficial all the way around during this period. Lastly, I appreciate the dilemma about having team players and folks who might have their own agendas, and my own take on that would be that democracy is messy. And one of the things we learn is that, much like Christine's comment earlier, we want all the viewpoints at the table early and often, and I think we get a better product. So I'd like to encourage you not to winnow out those folks too soon. Give us a chance. We vet them in the committee, but give us a chance to look at all those too, so that we can get the best committee possible and balance your concerns about herding cats.
Thank you.
We're doing these one at a time, actually. We're doing the work plan first, and then
We're doing the recruitment plan, yeah.
Okay, so
That's what we're doing right now.
So I'll save my comments till we do the liaison conversation.
Okay, George.
An observation, or maybe better a question of David. My sense is that the recruitment plan really places a bit more of the responsibility with the CAC for the management of the process than has been the case in previous recruitment processes. If that's true, I just wanted to make it clear. The MPC has kind of, through its staff, orchestrated the recruitment for CAC members in the past. Now we've got a more mature CAC that is in a position to take those tasks on directly. Is that accurate?
That's valid. And there's another consideration. The committee wanted to be very sensitive to the time commitments of the members of the MPC and not subject you to any more outside meetings as necessary. That's why we say if you have a designated liaison, that person is already committed to spend time with us. But to say 4 or 5 people from the MPC come in and do that, it's not fair to you. You've got too many other commitments.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further on this?
One more additional comment too, maybe with the recruiting to have a focus in mind that as much as we have dual roles for the Citizen Advisory Committee members of the public participation and as advisors to NPC, my observations are that the public participation piece has really come along nicely. There's still more to do, but maybe with the recruitment and eye to the folks who are interested in identifying the policy choices, the options, who want to have that robust conversation at the CAC to inform us about policy choices and options. That's what we're really looking for.
I'll overlook the reference to the word you said.
You should never say should not be spoken.
It's very difficult for people coming in from the outside who have no experience with what you do or what we do or what the NPO is to understand that. There are certain policy things, certain guidelines that we need to follow. It's a learning process, and one of the training sessions where I attended, I likened it to this gigantic mosaic on the wall of thousands and thousands of tiles, and each month we pick up a piece of one of the tiles, and by the time we finish our term, we know about 6 tiles. So we try and educate people. Staff tries to educate people as we go along, and they've done a very good job of it. It's still, I would hope people coming in know what the MPO does, but it's rare that they do.
Okay, so we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And the motion carries. Is there anything else?
Could I hear the exact motion?
I stated the motion as to approve the plan as presented.
And I believe, Mr. Chair, that yet to be resolved is particularly the issue of the appointment of MPC liaison. Commissioner Handy had a suggestion along those lines, but some formalization of that. Open the recruitment process is the other thing. Okay.
I just suggest we have one person as a liaison so there's some continuity. I think that's what I heard you confer, and I was going to nominate Commissioner Handy for that position. And,
He really,
I'll second that.
he's got so much discretionary time. I know, because I see him work.
But following up on what he was saying, I really do think it would be beneficial to us in the liaison issue if we just rotated for a year or whatever through all of us, and we knew that our time was going to come when we were going to be liaison. So it isn't that you are just begging someone to do it. We set up a rotation responsibility, and we just go through all of us, and at one point we will all have to do that. I just think that
All have the opportunity.
the privilege.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say that I personally think that if Rob wants to do it, he'd be great at it. But I also think that there is a point at which it is not a good idea to encourage or put additional responsibilities on people who already have pretty significant responsibilities. And
It's true.
right, and it may well be that that one of us could take on the responsibility of being the liaison. I'll just say in my, most recent 15 years of experience that it's unlikely that you'll get kind of, the committee will get the kind of response that they got when you were in that position, because you're extraordinary, and not everybody else is going to be able to meet that. So I'll just say for me, I don't have time to do that. It's not in my work description to do that, and I would love to do it, and maybe if I'm ever in a position to be retired, I could do it, but I cannot do it and do the rest of my job. So I'll just say that, but if Rob wants to do it, he'd be great at it. And if I calculate that right, I would have to be on my 6th term before the county would then come up as the...
I
just think that get a waiver. I just think that the public should understand that, we're looking around the table, and I don't know how many committees you guys have, but the county commissioners and city councilors have 20, 30. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The workload, it's not a workable situation to appoint most of these elected officials to this. But having said that, I'd like to ask if the commissioner would agree to serve, and then we can move on and get him appointed.
Well, I thought the MPC tradition was to nominate and appoint people who weren't present, so it's... Well, 2 thoughts. I don't have my calendar in front of me. It's the 3rd Wednesday.
Currently, it's the 3rd Wednesday with the possibility of moving it to the 3rd Thursday. That's in the machinery, so it hasn't been decided yet, but it's in the machinery.
Well, we'll ask Mr. Warren and Ms. Crawford in that I have been looking at my schedule, and it has given me pause for deep thought here. Would ODOT be willing to collaborate with me that if I can't make it to one of these meetings over the next 6 months, that you will step in for me? Could we look at our calendars together?
Sure.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I will agree to consider this then. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do I have a motion to appoint him for 3 years then? What do you want? For life. Life period.
6 months.
Somebody will be surprised.
6 months. So, could I get a motion to appoint him for 6 months?
I move.
Second.
Okay. So we're having a motion to approve Commissioner Handy as the Metropolitan Policy Committee's liaison to the Citizen Advisory Committee for 6 months. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. And the motion does pass unanimously. So thank you. Anything further from the CAC?
We meet from 5:30 to 7:30 in the Singer room. It's on the 2nd floor of the library. And again, we will be doing that for the next 2 or 3 months. But we need to shift over to a different event. And everybody's welcome. I mean, we're not just saying we have one liaison. Anyone can come. It's an open meeting. We welcome you to attend, and we welcome your viewpoints there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let's move on to item 5E and call up Mr. Thompson. This is fiscal year 2010 Surface Transportation Program Urban, also known around here as STIP-U, which is not a negative thing toward anyone. Preservation, Project Development, Modernization Programming, and the action requested is to approve Resolution 2009-09 Programming fiscal year 2010 STIP new funds. We had the public hearing on this a month ago, and so go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
when it's appropriate, I would like to address some of the issues that the advocacy group brought up and that $50,000
Okay.
amount.
Do you want to make any comments, Paul, or should we jump right in?
I'd like to make just a brief comment or two just to fill you in on some of the activity since the last meeting. Again, you held a public hearing on this, and at that time, the public comment hearing was open. It was still open through this past Sunday evening. And I just want to report that beyond the public testimony offered at the CAC meeting, there was no other public comment received via email or directly. So again, there was public testimony for you a month ago. There was public comment offered at the CAC meeting. The CAC, since at their meeting, passed two motions, and again, this is in my memo. They passed a motion supporting the TPC recommendation to fund the 4 projects listed at the amounts listed with the SDPU funds in fiscal year 10, and then they passed a second motion to encourage the MPC to look for funding for the MLK roundabout improvements. Now, the CAC had quite a bit of discussion about specific ways to fund those out of this STPU. They looked, as you did, at perhaps moving $50,000 out of one or another of the recommended projects, and really couldn't come to a satisfactory solution there because those projects needed that funding to remain whole, essentially. So they supported, in the end, what you see in the memo as the TPC recommendation that came before you last month was the draft recommendation, and went back before you was the final recommendation this month. And again, the public comment period closed. Since the writing of this memo, I understand there is new information that I've learned from the city of Springfield, and I believe Councilor Wiley wants to speak to that in part.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I just have a couple, I kind of make some points, and I think it's important since this has kind of gone on and we've had a lot of different conversations about it. The first thing is that when we built the roundabout, we were assured by our legal counsel that we were meeting the safety standards that are acceptable in today's industry. Second thing is that when the council was first approached by our staff with concerns that the advocacy group had brought up, the council never hesitated. There's never been a resistance to moving ahead. The council directed the staff to fix the problem as they saw it. And we call that by enhancing pedestrian crosswalks. That's what we want to do. Government moves slowly, and I think that's hard for advocacy groups to realize that funds that aren't in the budget have to be found, planning, so forth has to happen. But good news is, I think we all have worked together to try to make this happen. And we had hoped for, of course, the additional $50,000, but it's going to cost, as Mr. Shine pointed out, a great deal more than $50,000. And what staff informed me yesterday is that we have looked at our system development charges from our transportation improvement project, and those fees, we can put $200,000 towards that project at this time, which was really good news and news to me. So we are moving ahead with this quite quickly, and if you would like, Tom Boyette could give you a very, very quick update on things that are happening, including starting next week.
Okay, sure.
Tom?
Come on up, Tom. Yeah, you want to say something, Christine? Go ahead.
Well, because the roundabout is in my core, and as a user of it on a daily basis. One, it's new, and we're all learning. It's a 2-lane roundabout. There just aren't any. There's a huge educational piece, and I know Tom is going to address it. We're going to work on the educational piece. I also walk the roundabout, so understand as foot traffic, someone trying to get across. We're about to put MX in there. That's going to add another piece to the mix of how the roundabout works. So as much as we are committed, and I'm personally committed, because it has challenges, whether you're in a car or you're not, how you learn how to use a roundabout. Because we're going to build more. I mean, there will be more, and it is like any kind of new mode of transportation. It takes time to just, if we didn't change anything, just for everyone to get comfortable using it. And so if we can look at how it's being used, figure out ways to make those improvements so they make sense, and as MX comes online and we learn how people are getting on and off the bus and how they're starting to try, because they'll be using the roundabout to try to get around, is just to take the time to make sure that whatever we do makes sense so that everybody in this learning curve actually comes out ahead, and everybody, cars and everyone, can get through the intersection and without having any sort of, those last minutes, which some of us still do, is go, which lane did I want to be in here? Or did I need to stop because that car isn't going to stop for me? So is give us the chance to particularly get MX up and running, because it's a new configuration right at the roundabout that all of us are going to have to get used to. And so, but I can personally say that we're very, very committed as a council to make sure it works, because it is kind of the signature project for the city of Springfield, and hopefully it would be replicated in the future if we get it all figured out correctly.
Okay, Tom, let's make some remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brevity is not one of my strong suits, so I'll try to practice. Very quickly, we did finally get our year-end fund balancing accomplished for the prior fiscal cycle, and we're quite comfortable that there's $200,000 in the System Development Improvement Fund to move to this project. We have continued. We were working on design last month when we were here talking to you. We've continued that process. We've met with the suppliers of the rapid rectangular flashing beacons and the HAWK pedestrian crossing signals. We have a design layout and a rough cost estimate. It looks like that we are going to be able to deploy countermeasures, and potentially even sometime this fall. What our biggest concern is that because the National Cooperative Highway Research Project isn't completed, we don't want to get too far out in front of what sort of the state of the practice and the state of the art will be in this kind of treatment, and end up throwing away a bunch of improvements and valuable dollars that we have for that. So our solution there is to try to design a project that the pole mounts and the rest of it is adaptable to what our best guess is at this point, what will come out of the research project. So that is all moving forward. It has continued in the pipeline. We were active on it before last month's meeting. We're continuing to move that ahead. The second piece is that we have developed a community outreach project that, in cooperation with Springfield Police and the City Manager's Office, and intend to put that into place in the next 2 weeks. It involves dealing with drivers at the police level within the roundabout, conveying information, really working on an outreach process as opposed to a punishment process, so that we can continue to educate. As the counselor said, it's fairly new technology. It will take a number of years locally, regionally, and nationally for drivers to learn to adapt to the technology and to begin to respect pedestrians more in a driving environment. And that's at non-signalized intersections, signalized intersections, roundabouts. It's a cultural thing, as I said last week. We have a lot of catch-up, or last month, a lot of catch-up to do to get to the place where some of the European countries are, England in particular, Denmark, and even Japan, in terms of understanding sort of the rights of pedestrians when you're in a vehicle. At any rate, it's a pretty ambitious one-on-one driver contact, direct mail, speakers bureau, displays, flyers, radio ads, print ads, reaching out through the Department of Motor Vehicles, cooperation with the state to get at new drivers, because as the roundabouts increase, DMV needs to be able to educate new drivers on how to use them. newsletters, media advisories, and media interviews. And, of course, the traffic group at Springfield Police at the roundabout, observing behavior and pulling folks over, and if it isn't an egregious violation, doing an education piece. So we're designing some material that can be handed out by our patrolling officers to assist, explain, that was a pedestrian. Your job is to stop when you see a pedestrian in a crosswalk. Here's a short flyer on how to do that, I guess, or when you're in the lane, this lane change is illegal.
They need to hand those out. People don't know it.
It's, the best we can come up with at this point. So, that wasn't as brief as I'd like, but that's what we're up to.
Okay, questions, comments from MPC member on anything in this whole thing? Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Tom, on the flip side of that, do we have kind of a pedestrian defense education plan? Because it's going to take a long time for drivers to kind of ramp up to this, but in the meantime, somebody like Dennis or somebody else is walking across, that, or even myself, because I'm getting slower as we go along. There's going to be some kind of way to help people to be able to negotiate that without getting themselves seriously injured or killed.
I didn't mean to leave that part out, but the safety and the driving tips also applies to pedestrians. So we'll be trying to communicate with finding, the pedestrian groups and talking with them about how to cross. In my own neighborhood, there's a yield to pedestrian crossing that's about 100 feet from a signal, and I walk through there almost every day, and it can be a challenge. Sometimes I jump out in front and I go like that. I'm in the crosswalk, it's your turn to yield to me. And sometimes I read the driver's face, or try to, and decide to stay on the curb and let them flow through. So it's evolving. I think, frankly, there's room within the laws and possibility to evolve traffic laws to a point where there is a greater respect for pedestrians, and that's something else that we advocate for. My traffic engineers on the Oregon Traffic Control Devices Committee, and it will be a process of evolution in this country, especially as we move away from a dominant car culture. So,
any other questions about the? Yes, Mayor.
Just a comment. Of course, we have this issue in all our communities, not just in one community. So, and I actually think all of us have observed some deterioration in. That's why we have our, the Eye to Eye campaign to try to. So, whatever we can do as a body together to do this education thing, I think is in all of our interest. People don't stay in one community. So I just offer that, and I really want to say that I appreciate your commitment to the $200,000 and working with these folks and getting this for them to be able to feel they can safely. I know you're committed to it, and I appreciate it very, very, very much. So thank you for responding. And actually, I wanted to point out, we've been talking a long time about our hopes that when people had issues, they would bring them here, and we could have a robust discussion, and we have that. So that's good. So thank you very much, and thank you.
Okay, Rob.
Thank you. Mr. Boyott, some of the public comment mentioned that perhaps the funding was only allocated for materials and not labor. Can you address that?
Sure. It's in a memo that I got from my capable staff yesterday, and actually was able to send out this morning to the advocacy committee via email. What the memo says is we've had the vendor on site, and the vendors looked at our concept designs and provided rough cost estimates between $60,000 and $70,000 for the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, and then approximately $300 for the hot, high-intensity, whatever it is, signal. Those estimates are for equipment only. We are looking at two-staging this deployment. early action that we believe we can afford with $200,000, and then once the NCHRP report is published and the Access Board picks that up and we have a sense of where the guidelines are going, so we want to minimize the risk of throwaway investment, then we'll follow on, and it's quite possible we'll be back to the STIF-U for additional resources and to other places.
I also wanted to have you help me reconcile different comments I've heard around the table about when this might happen. Would it happen after the design is complete or after the MX is installed? Or give me some timelines when we anticipate this. I know the study's going to happen this fall, but when do we see things happening on the ground?
As soon as we're through design and we actually make our visit to the city council to have them amend the capital budget to take funding from one source and put it into this project, then we'll be able to procure the contract and get underway. But we do have to integrate with the MX project schedule because we don't want to be in that area kind of fumbling on top of each other to get it done. So I'm still hopeful that we have time this fall to get out on the ground and do something.
And along the timing issues that I believe that City of Springfield has suspended collecting SDCs at this time, where does that fit in with?
It's,
We got money.
yes,
Oh, you have that on
money,
hand,
but
okay.
that's what we've done is we're continuing to collect the SDCs were revisited by council and increased, but the increase has been deferred on residential development and does apply to commercial development. So assuming we get some significant commercial development, that's the inflow, but we also have a capital budget that's funded by SDC, so the money's there.
And lastly, I really appreciate my colleagues at the City of Springfield, Councilor Lundberg and Wiley, who've been working really hard on this. As you may know, our Wayne County staff brought this bigger STIF-U issue before the full Board of County Commissioners, and we had a robust discussion. You can imagine Commissioner Dwyer's comments on this, and the commission voted 5-0 to support this particular avenue approach towards a roundabout. Could you just briefly summarize for us and others what your commitment is at this point based on this robust discussion?
How long ago did you bring that to us?
It was in June.
In June. So when they brought us the concerns, and I think that's when the advocacy group first brought it to the media, and the staff brought it to us, we said then, go do it, fix it. And so we explored a number of things. Some of the things that they brought to us were the types of mitigation that we could use, flashing lights and warning signs and a number of things. And I think we chose we voted on it and chose a group of deterrents that would help this project. And then we said, go do it. So as far as we know, the staff is doing that, and that it will, the signs and whatnot will go up as soon as they're ready. After the information from National comes in, we may make it even more. But at this point, we're moving ahead with deterrent and enhancements and protection as best we can. What I wanted to do, but I guess it's not available, I wanted to put a full-size body figure at each crosswalk that would catch the eye. But I guess that's not available right now.
Because we need the body.
Well, we've had enormous amounts of conversation because it isn't just the roundabout project that we've been working with, it is MX. So all the way down the entire route to Main Street has been this, I can't even, volumes of, and I'm sure West Eugene is going to be the same way, volumes of information sitting out physically on the multi-use path and counting people going across and where they go across. So it's always a concern to make sure, as I say, I've lived in that area and crossed that intersection of Pioneer Parkway long before the roundabout was there with small children, and it's just always a concern in a fast-moving environment how you make sure people get across safely and how you get people just plain around it. But I still think that people's human nature is going to prevail over the best intentions we have. So to work it so that I just feel that when MX comes, that'll be a major stop at that intersection to try and get to different places. That you would want to see partly what's going to occur, and that these are all new technologies, so we need to invest wisely in what we think is the most effective that catches people's attention the best, because they're pretty advanced. And but to say that we aren't absolutely going to make that intersection work because we've invested so much, and the MX is invested so much to make that whole corridor work, that we've already voted on it and have had lengthy discussions about what it would take. So I'm very confident that we will take it.
Sure. We're beyond the time, and
I just want to have one more
take as much time as you want, but we are now truncating the other items.
Okay, just one final thing. We're pioneering, and as you all have noted, that traffic circles are new in our community, and we're learning as we're going. And even within our own body, people are going, oh no, when we start trying to bring up traffic circles. And so, we are making every effort to make them safe and make them functional.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this item?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
And I believe that the Springfield Council and staff has worked hard to address the concerns of the countywide advocacy group. I believe they've worked well to address the concerns of the county commissioners, and I'd like to move to approve the resolution for the 2009 programming, 2009-09 programming for fiscal year 2010 STIP funds as recommended in the staff report.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion on the motion? I'll just say that I think I have never seen a traffic stop for a motorist who has run through an intersection where a pedestrian was attempting to cross the intersection. I've had 3 people killed in my district at 13th and Hilliard, at 18th and Oak, and at Bailey Hill Road and 18th, who were either crossing the street legally or illegally, but they were run over. 2 of them, they were in the crosswalk. 1, they were out of the crosswalk. So the way we dismiss this traffic safety issue by having virtually no law enforcement. This morning, by the way, I walk to work a lot. This morning at 18th and Friendly, I counted 18 cars that went by while I was standing off the curb. Okay, so the idea that we're going to, say that we're going to ask officers to pull people over, at least in Eugene, I have never seen that. I have never seen that, not once. So I just think we're making a mockery of this whole multimodal idea and getting people to use bikes and pedestrian and getting them to walk more when you're literally taking your life in your hands when you're not using a car. So what message are we really sending? But we don't have time for my speeches. So if you ever find out, if you guys in Springfield ever find out an officer is given a ticket for that, let me know. Because at this point in time, I would say you've never done that. And I would say rarely does it happen in Eugene. All right, let's move on. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no, and the motion is adopted. Okay, Mr. Thompson, you're back up with the letters in support of the Eugene and Springfield Tiger grant applications. And I don't think there's any objection. And do you have any further comments?
The only additional comment is just to draw attention that both of the projects are joint projects. It's titled Eugene and Springfield, but the Eugene project is a joint project with ODOT, and the Springfield project is a joint project with ODOT and LTD, and the Oregon Transportation Commission has formally endorsed both applications.
So, can we get a motion to approve the letters of support?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, in our minutes recorder, get the second. We had numerous seconds, so.
Great.
All those in favor, further discussion. Commissioner Hand.
I just want to say I appreciate both of these projects. They look very exciting. I am particularly excited about Springfield's work on the multi-way boulevard in Glenwood. Kudos to staff who put the time in to take advantage of getting these funding opportunities. Good work.
Okay, further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, say no. Next up, item G, which is the FY 2011-2013 STPU funding framework. Paul Thompson is here. This is an information item, and please proceed.
Okay, well, we just crossed the threshold 2 items ago from programming the last of the FY10 money, and so now we're looking at the next 3 years for the STPU funding. And all of the calendar and what we've been telling you for the past 6 months or so is that we would take up the 2011-2013 process in October through the next 3 or 4 months. What we're trying to get here for you for information purposes is the schedule for that first part of the process. And see if you have any feedback on that. And this is also essentially this exact same information is in the CAC packet for next week's meeting, and they'll be giving us feedback. So again, as an information item, what we're showing you here is the proposed schedule and process for the first phase of the FY11 through 13 STPU funding. And by first phase, I mean reviewing the framework within which we determine the priorities and eventually accept applications. The second phase, beyond the time frame that's shown here, would run roughly January, February through April or May, where we would then accept applications, make recommendations for funding, as you just did with FY10. But again, this schedule for the reviewing of the framework shows how we hope to incorporate more public involvement than we have. The last several times we reviewed the STPU framework. It starts with doing some public awareness and just information campaigns on what STPU is about and what the current framework is like and what sort of funding has occurred under that. And then it moves into getting public input, attempting through the CAC and other venues to get public input on how a new framework might be crafted to meet priorities, bringing you a recommendation in November and December, and having approval by you of that framework by January at the latest, so we could then go into the application process. So again, we're just trying to get this before you really enter that discussion next month. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay. Any questions about the FY 2011-2013 STPU funding framework? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So, does this activity fall under the current MPO Unified Planning and Work Program?
Yes. In terms of the work program identifies that we would be engaging in this process, yes.
Okay. Any other questions on the Rob?
We started a very good conversation a couple months ago, and I recall Councilor Lundberg stimulated some great conversation about the formula, whether we were maybe going to adjust that or change the planning ratio and get more projects on the ground. That's part of what this discussion that we're beginning is happening. I certainly have a half dozen questions I could raise today for discussion's sake. I realize we've been a little behind on our time.
No, we're not now. We caught up.
And this is going to the Citizens Advisory Committee for work and public outreach when you mentioned engaging the public and getting work out, how do you envision, by the time this comes back to us in November or December, what will we have gone through to have the policy questions and suggestions here and to roll it out to the public? Can you give us a little more version about how we have something come back to us in a couple months that's robust?
Well, again, what this item was intended to do was give you the time frame for that process, and what we're looking at is having the CAC next week take their first look at this time frame and give us, the staff, a lot of input on how we engage the public most effectively. It's not the easiest thing to engage the public on, just because there may not be a lot of awareness about this, but we really want to get their help in how we can go about that. There are, in this schedule, beyond just bringing this information piece to you, 3 NPC meetings in October, November, and December, where they're identified in that sort of middle row, where we would talk with you next month about the assessment of the existing framework. In other words, how has the 10, 25, 65 worked or not worked, what have been the pros and cons of that. In November, based on input from your October discussion and TPC and CAC, we're talking about bringing to you a discussion around framework recommendations for the new one. In other words, what sort of pieces might you want to see in a framework that we don't have now? December would be trying to bring you a draft recommendation on how to put those pieces together into the cohesive framework. January would be adoption. Again, trying to reach out to the public through the CAC and through direct outreach at each of those points.
Okay. Well, I'll toss out a couple questions to frame maybe a discussion. First of all, we've been talking about our greenhouse gas emissions task force. One of the things that I'll be interested in, since these are flex funds, in addition to looking at bike, ped, transit, and paving streets, are what are the kinds of projects, when we look at greenhouse gas reductions, that might rise up or bubble up that can be addressed in flex funds that maybe aren't going to be addressed in the constrained list of the RTP. The Transportation Demand Management Program, I think, has worked pretty well, but it hasn't been funded very strongly. And I think beginning with the idea of perhaps doubling our funding for TDM. And there's also some new ideas in the TDM approach that perhaps it's the time to bring those into the conversation that our DPC staff perhaps is aware of, and we could have a memo on that, on what some of those things are. I'm very concerned about what LTD is going through with their bus service. We're facing some near or midterm crisis there. We're already cutting routes, and I hear that from my constituents all the time, the deep concern in the community. And so I'd like to see what we can do to partner with LTD. That's a big priority for us with the flex funds, and certainly where we can integrate land use and transportation. We had a great presentation from ODOT when Mr. Pickering was here, and there was discussion about least cost planning, and I'd like to see how that starts to fit in with some new generation of projects that can complement our standard projects that are on the constrained list.
And in keeping with Commissioner Kenney's request, if you're doing that memo, is maybe in the context of how we already do allocations. If these were priorities, would they or would they not fit into our allocation process now? Is that a simple enough question? Is if you were to pick a project that's based on greenhouse emissions or promoting that, would it fit within? Would it be a project that would be eligible under the criteria the way it is now?
I think the way, if I'm understanding the question correctly, the way that the current framework was structured in 2006 was to allow essentially the funding of anything that's allowed under the federal regulations of these funds. It's a question to me of the criteria that are perhaps used to weigh a project that has more greenhouse gas focus than one that's maybe strictly a modernization focus or one that's strictly a preservation focus. I think we could fund any of the types of projects that Commissioner Handy mentioned in the existing framework under the preservation, project development, and modernization. I can't think of an example that we couldn't. Obviously, within the current framework, there's this 10% target for TDM, and where Commissioner Handy mentioned perhaps doubling that, then it might require a change in the framework, if you will, or an exception if we were still under the current framework. But again, within especially that 65% chunk, where there's 10% for TDM, 25% planning, within that other 65%, that's everything else. It's a matter of the criteria and the way that we try and judge projects that are often apples against oranges, if you will. It's possible to fund them. It's how the staff and the CAC and ultimately the NBC weighs those projects against each other.
Okay, so that it would be an important piece in my mind if what we're actually picking maybe is, even if we didn't change the allocation so much as a criteria, maybe. It's trying to refine our work a little bit in terms of maybe not starting from scratch, but if we were to refine it. So what I think I'm hearing is that perhaps it's within the criteria that we would want to put some of the focus if we're looking at different types of projects or emphasis on certain types of projects.
I think you could go either way. I've heard both the suggestion that as opposed to the three categories we have now, you could perhaps maintain TDM as a category, planning as a category, and then have more categories beyond that, perhaps one specific to transit, one specific to whatever other type of project you wanted. Or you could maintain that broad category and have criteria that try to focus the funding towards certain criteria, certain priorities. You go either way. That's the discussion we want to have with you.
Alan?
Great, I think that's very appropriate. As well as looking forward, I think it would be helpful to look backwards a little bit and go back 3 to 5 years where we have invested these monies and what kind of projects within these categories and how much have been, especially within the 65%, how much have been within each of the different transportation modes.
I'll just perhaps refresh that in June I did do a primer on this and described the current framework and had an attachment in there that had all of the STP funding from 2003 or 4 up to the present. So I think that may be addressing that, but I'd be happy to bring it back.
Yeah, reattach that.
Okay, anything further on the discussion of the future, the 2011-2013 STIPU funding framework? Yes.
I just wanted to sort of think about how, one of the things we do is we silo our thinking, and I have a desire for us to integrate our thinking, and so I'm thinking about the Oregon Transportation Commission coming, and I think we'll be talking, we'll talk about that. But and one of the things, as I understand, they're going to do is ask us what we can work on better together, and that to me, I want to know what. We usually get constrained by what they're going to approve or not approve, and so somehow we have to get out in front of that conversation with what we would like to work with them on that fits into what they have as our statewide transportation goals, and how that intersects with this as well. So is that clear to you?
Yeah, it is clear to me, and there are certainly some very specific intersections and some broader policy overlaps. I guess I'll take this opportunity to mention one of the things that is still in development, but the FY10 through 13 STIP, Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, was put on hold, is now coming back to life, if you will, and the process is starting again. And as part of the legislative action that adjusted funding for ODOT, there's had to be adjustments in the STIP funding categories. Modernization was increased because the legislature earmarked, if you will, money for certain modernization projects throughout the state. At the same time, that resulted in reductions in almost all of the other STIP categories being proposed, including a proposed reduction in ODOT's funding of the TDM program in all 6 of the MPOs. Well, actually not Metropolitan because they don't get funding for that, but specifically in our MPO. And so that reduction in proposed ODOT reduction in their portion of TDM funding that we have had for many years could very definitely affect our decision on funding TDM to SDPU.
I'm looking for ways to inform them of what we think we could do better with them and inform us back into about how we like doing our frame.
Alan, then Rob.
Just following up on what the mayor said, certainly from the state has passed us wisdom about integrating transportation and land use, and the more we do that, I think the more our eyes open to the potential successes there. And so the question is, how do we fund those types of things? And the recommendations from the West Eugene Collaborative are a very good example that there's all sorts of recommendations in there that may be outside some of the normal funding streams of how projects get prioritized and funded. So I not only would like to continue to see us provide leadership here in across our metro area with finding ways to create criteria, if that needs to happen, to find ways to include those projects. But as we do things like meet with the OTC next week, is to send signals to the state that that we get it and that we want to be at the front of the line for some of these more modern approaches to least cost planning and implementing integration of land use and transportation. So thank you.
Okay, that concludes our discussion of the 2011-2013 STIFU funding framework. Next, I'd like to call on Mr. Thompson again for the item H, MPO Greenhouse Gas Task Force Report. And this has been set up for an information item, so please proceed.
And I'll just say up front that I am not going to have the latest information on this, but again, in my memo, we indicated some of the framework, the decision, discussion of MPC at last month's meeting led to a staff proposal on the second page for the formation of a subcommittee to help support Councilors Zelinka and Wiley in their service on the task force. One of the things that I did not have final confirmation of as of the date of this memo, but I do now, is that the task force meeting dates have been set. There's 4 of them, all in Salem on October 15th and 29th, and November 12th and December 4th. There's also a statewide staff meeting that will happen on October 9th here in Eugene. ODOT staff and staff from all 6 of the MPOs will be here on the 9th to talk about the task force and preparing for that. And then just immediately prior to this MPC meeting, there was a meeting, I believe, with the facilitators that would be, the people that would be facilitating the task force, and Councilor Zelinka and some of the staff. So I don't have that latest information to add. Again, we're just trying to bring you up to date and get some feedback from the staff proposal for the subcommittee to support the members.
The facilitator just want to kind of inform us what was happening with the process and how things are going, and also about the dates, but then also get some more feedback about issues and things that we'd like to see happen, things that we're afraid might not happen, or afraid might happen at the task force level. And you know, I think I ended up the conversation by saying, look, we've got 4 meetings and 14 total hours of work to do, or time to work with, and that's just not a lot. So, and it's going to happen very quickly. So, expectations about that task force might not meet the reality of constrained times.
Okay. Are they expected to complete a report by statute or?
Yeah, by statute by January.
January of?
10.
10, okay.
January. So, yeah. So our 4 meetings will last October through December.
This is the fast emitting greenhouse gas.
Yes. That's right.
Fast task force. Okay. Anything further? Any questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, Rob.
Yes, I also just wanted to comment on the makeup of the staffing supporting the efforts of whoever our electeds are. And certainly a quality bunch here, and certainly transportation-centric. And as we're trying to integrate land use and transportation, and integrate transportation with our carbon footprint, and integrate transportation with our next economy, I wonder if there's room, given the time frame here, that if we either can add to or yet substitute some staff members from the proposed list. For example, at Lane County, very talented staff person, Ms. Berry, and I also think about our economic development director, Mike McKenzie-Barr, who is very involved with the economy, with greenhouse gas emissions and jobs, and hoping that this staff makeup can be a little more inclusive of some other professional disciplines rather than the current makeup.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it does have both a planning and a transportation person in both City of Eugene and City of Springfield. So both of those, and I think that would be really appropriate for Lane County also to bring, because it is transportation and land use. It's not just transportation, although it comes down here. So having the Lane County land use folks be involved in that would be good.
What about providing e-web? I mean, this is greenhouse gas. This is energy, transportation. This isn't just transportation.
Well, it's transportation and land. So it's really combined. I'm not sure how it works. I do see LTE being good.
So it's not energy production?
No, it's not energy at all.
It's not like greenhouse gases from...
No, it's purely about vehicles.
Exhaust pipes.
Yeah, and the nexus between the transportation and land use. Okay. And the result, hopefully, is supposed to be some recommended legislation to the 2010 legislature.
We also have Ron Bittner of Environmental Services for City of Springfield. He'll be sitting in on that too, as well as Greg Mott. So we've got
Okay.
I like the economic development.
Yeah, well, Eugene and Springfield both have economic development people involved. Okay, well, thank you for your report. Yep.
Just because I guess we're looking for some direction here, I'd like to leave us room to approve the proposed staff support, and that if the jurisdictions want to add somebody, that our MTC representatives can make some suggestions outside of this meeting. In the case we've heard two names here, that if that would help round out the committee makeup, that we could do so.
Yes, again, I think the MPO is here to facilitate and support this staff committee, supporting the MPO members on the task force. So, again, we're open to whatever membership each jurisdiction wants on that staff committee.
Including MPC members, Hillary and I have members there. So if you guys want to participate, that's great too.
Okay. All right. Let's move down to item I. I had an administrative matter, and that is our distinguished vice chair and our not so distinguished chair can't make the October 8th meeting. I was wondering who would be chairing the October 8th meeting of the MPC. Or if you have any guidance on who should chair. Or you'll figure that out when Alan and I aren't here. And George will have it right here.
It would be helpful to staff to have it predetermined so that we could have some communication with the chair or the presiding officer for that meeting. And the tradition has been, in the absence of the chair and the vice chair, that a pro tem is identified at the spot, so that anyone who would like to hold up their hand, we can work on it.
Christine.
She's here. We can't appoint her.
Yeah, who's not here?
Mike.
Mike can't be.
Eugene, Springfield, and Lane.
Well, I just thought that we got it, we have county, we have city, one city, maybe, yeah, one of you two.
There is a slight chance I'll be here in the 8th, but it's not very likely.
Was that a nod? Okay.
I'm sure we'll get their arm twisted.
It's not every day the University of New Mexico invites me to give a lecture. I just want to get that out on the record. Yeah, going to law school. Okay, so let's let our record reflect the unanimous approval of Councilor Lundberg to chair the next MPC meeting if Councilor Zelenka's business and my business don't allow us to be here. Okay, so let's turn to our friends from the Oregon Department of Transportation.
All right.
And ask Ms. Crawford if she'd like to make any remarks.
I do. I have 3 updates. The first is Connect Oregon 3. So House Bill 2001, the Job and Transportation Act, funded $100 million for the Connect Oregon 3 process. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Connect Oregon 3, or Connect Oregon, it's a grant for non-highway projects, so air, rail, transit, and marine. We'll provide a more thorough update next month on that with a timeline when more information becomes available. That is gearing up. The second update I have is the STIP process. We will be holding a Super Act meeting next month, so October 29th. We have 2 folks from this body coming. We have Commissioner Handy, who will be representing the Wayne County Board of Commissioners, and then we have Mayor Piercy, who will be representing the MPC. We also have MPO staff person, Andrea Reiner, in that meeting as well. So that meeting will primarily be to discuss the overview of what has been going on with the draft 1013 STIP, what some of the cuts have been, and just kind of get everybody up to speed on that process. And then in November and December, we'll start the public involvement process. We'll go to all of the acts, and of course, that'll be the Board of County Commission and the MPC here to give those updates and provide an overview of public involvement process for the draft 1013 STIP. And then the last is the OTC. So as you all are aware, the OTC is coming to Eugene next week. They're holding the meeting at the Hilton on September 15th, 16th. From 12 to 5 is the local agency discussion, I should say that, what will be occurring. 12 o'clock they'll have a tolling white paper forum, which I don't know if you recall about, 4 to 6 months ago, ODOT came to present the tolling white papers. So what will happen is ODOT will go and present these papers again to the OTC and provide an overview of the stakeholder feedback that we got through all of that process. So that occurs from 12 to 3. Then at 3:15, we'll have a presentation from LTD on the MX routes. Then at 3:45, we'll have a West Eugene Collaborative presentation. And then from 4:15 to 5:15, we'll have a local agency workshop discussion where 2 members of each jurisdiction in Lane County have been invited to come and to participate in that roundtable discussion. Now that being said, of course, the meeting is open for others to sit in the audience and of course, watch the meeting unfold. September 16th, they will hold their regular business with public comment opportunity at the beginning and end of each of the meetings. So, I don't know if you have any other questions about any of those 3 updates, but.
Okay, our board meeting, we're going to recess our board meeting and just allow all of our commissioners to come over to that.
And I should add that I will also be sending out the agenda today to everybody. So.
Excellent. Anything further on the topic of the ODOT update? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious, and this is just from my ignorance. When Randy Pay passed away, he was a representative from Lane County. Is there anyone on the OTC now from our area?
No. Well, actually, from our district, it's
Well,
Brown.
Randy Pay didn't represent Lane County. He represented this area, this ODOT area.
Yeah.
And there is a replacement who is from from Newport, I believe.
Newport, yeah.
Okay.
Because District 2 goes all the way up to that story.
All right, well, thank you for the information.
Okay. And let's ask Mr. Thompson if he wants to make any comments on the FY0811 MTIP administrative amendment.
As usual, really no comments. There is a summary here. I'd be happy to answer questions or have other staff assist me if there are questions. Otherwise, no additional comments. And I do have one other item.
Okay. Anything further on the MTIP first? Nope. Okay. What's your other item?
It's, again, just an information piece. I want to let you know that the Oregon Household Activity Survey, which you may know better as the travel survey, the household travel survey, for our area will start September 28th. The recruitment process starts September 28th, and that survey will run through the fall and probably into the winter. So you may have some constituents or citizens asking about, gee, we're getting this call recruiting us for this survey to give all this information about how we drive and how we get around, what's going on. There is a point person at LCOG. There is, and it'll be identified in all of the phone contacts and the other public information that's going out. There's a point person at LCOG to address the public inquiries. But if you get them directly, I just want to let you know that that will be starting September 28th.
Okay. Anything further in terms of next steps?
Could you decide, I noticed the next meetings, there was an email discussion about different costs for different meetings and locations, and I didn't know if you came up with any.
It was cheaper to hold the meetings at the city library because of the costs associated with the television recording. So if we were simply going to go on the basis of money, we would hold all the meetings in the city library, Eugene City Library. Because when we move the meetings to this room or to the juvenile justice, county's juvenile justice facility, then the cost of recording the meeting is much higher. So that's a cost that we're bearing to accommodate the idea of moving the meeting around. What I thought we might do is we might move the meetings around a little less. So we would still be accommodating the idea of moving the meetings around to the county or to Springfield, but that we would be doing more of our meetings in the library. That would be a cost savings measure.
I think a part of the rationale, and you folks are in a better position to judge than I, but a part of the rationale for moving them around was not pride of hosting as much as it was to make it convenient for members of the public from the different communities to attend. And that's a judgment call that clearly plays into this issue. How many people from, for example, today, the Springfield community, because it's here, found it convenient to attend. I think having it on access television provides a lot of that exposure. It's a one-way exposure, obviously, but that may play into a decision as to how you want to do it in the future.
So I guess unless there's somebody that has a solution to this, I think we should stick with our next the next three meetings, which are set on your next meeting, namely Serbu Center, the Bascom-Tykeson room in the Eugene Public Library, and then in December back here in this room. Unless there's some strong feeling about making the change. Okay?
Just want to comment that the November 12th meeting conflicts with the SB 2186 greenhouse gas task force meeting. Correct?
So that would be one that you wouldn't be able to attend. Okay. So I've already contacted Commissioner Fleener about substituting in for me on the 8th of October. If you could, you guys could confer about who would represent the city of Eugene on the 12th of November, that'd be great. Anything else for the good of the order? Nope. Okay. Then we are adjourned. Thank you so much.